Good afternoon, everybody. I know we got some some people jumped in, didn't hear my little preamble, so I'll go ahead and repeat it. Our guest speaker today, Stephanie, she is not feeling well today, so she had to decline their invitation to come today, but we do have a substitute speaker coming to speak on the same topic. But they are not going to be able to join us until about 10 after. So we've got a little bit of wiggle room. And I see Linda says she's not feeling well, got the flu. That is going around. I had it last week. My husband had it the week before. I'm so sorry you're not feeling well, but I'm so glad you were able to join us, Linda. So in the meantime, while we wait, we can either just mind our own business and wait, or we can chit chat. I'd love to see what's going on with everybody, how their week is going, how their holiday preparations are going. But of course, if you would rather just keep to yourself and not chit chat, I will not be offended, I promise. And if for some reason our guest speaker is not able to make it or log in for some reason, we can still just do maybe a little impromptu support group, and you all will still get your education stipend. So regardless of what we talk about today, that's still definitely on the table. We're not going to take that from you at all. We got Vanessa joining us. Good afternoon, Vanessa. Glad you're here. We'll have a few more people trickling in as we wait for our guest to join us. Hopefully they won't make us wait too much longer, but they agreed to join us last minute, so I'm definitely not complaining that they've got things they got going on. See some new names. It's always nice to have new people join us. Welcome. So we are having our support group on, I believe it's Monday, the 18th. Let me double check my calendar before I give you the wrong date. And we're going to be doing a scavenger hunt. So I'm excited to do that. I've never done a scavenger hunt on Zoom before, so we'll see how that goes. And everyone who participates, I'm going to try to send a little something your way, but there will be a winner who gets, you know, a big prize from, well, maybe not a big prize, you're not getting like a Mercedes or anything, but you'll get a little gift gift from me for participating, as well as getting the most points for the scavenger hunt. Thank you, Vanessa. Happy holidays to you as well. Has everyone, have you been able to complete all of your preparations? I tried to complete mine yesterday. Not quite, almost. More new names. This is exciting.
Hi, Jenny, and others on the call. I was able to, I'm glad to be here today about, long-term financial planning. But with Christmas holiday, well, because it's our funds have been streamlined a bit, it has been a great opportunity for us to really dig into why we celebrate, the real reason for the season.
That's wonderful. And I think that gets lost a lot, right? Whether you are celebrating due to religious reasons or secular reasons, I think this is just a great time of year to really focus on what's important and who we have on our team, who we have on our side, our family, friends, biological or adopted, right? So I think that can be really valuable, especially as we wrap up the year and go into a new one, to just really kind of refocus on what's important, what's truly important to us. And of course, it's always fun to give and receive, but that isn't always the point of this time of year. So thank you for sharing that. Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat myself. So I apologize if you've already heard it, but we have had some new people pop in since the last time I said so. We did have a quick or a last minute change of plans with our speaker. She's not feeling well herself, as we all know, it's kind of going around. And so she lost her voice and is unable to come and do our training today. But we do have a substitute guest speaker coming in to speak on the same topic. And he said that he will be available at about 10 after 1. So we've got a few minutes to kill before he gets here. And so we're just kind of chit-chatting and talking about the holidays or staring at each other awkwardly through the screen. Linda, I'm sorry to hear that you haven't been in the spirit of Christmas. It can be very difficult, I think. There's a lot of expectations of what we're supposed to feel and what we're supposed to be doing at this time of year. And so that's okay. You know, it is what it is. And you might not be in the Christmas spirit now, but hopefully you'll warm to it as the days, as the day draws near. And if you don't, that's okay too, right? Some years are better than others. And so don't put too many expectations on yourself, right? Remember, shame lives and should. So we don't think about what we should be doing, what we should be feeling. We just accept where we are and find grace and peace there. Miss Shirley, how are you doing? How's mom doing?
I'm good. She's still kind of moving kind of slow. I don't
Mhm.
know. One of my friends was just telling me, you got to understand she's 93 years old and there are going to
Yeah.
be days that she may not want to do things. So I had to reevaluate myself and let me stop and just do her pace, what she wants to do. And if I plan something else, I'll just have to change it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm learning.
Yes. It's like as soon as you get the steps down, the tempo changes.
Yes. 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 And I guess it's just so hard because I'm so used to going and just having everything laid out. That doesn't
Yeah.
work anymore. I've got to learn to just if she doesn't feel like it this morning, then we just stay home.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's got to be difficult. I mean, I know a little bit about your background and not having
Mhm.
to really consider other people's schedules and other people's things, and
Yep.
having to kind of, you know,
Yeah.
redirect or reorient can be kind of a shocker.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I'm just such an organized person, trying to make sure I have things planned out, but I've got to learn to just go with the flow. And that's
Yeah.
hard for me.
But, I think even in that, there's, would you have had the opportunity to learn those skills or to learn that lesson if you hadn't become a caregiver, And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you're adding to your own growth during this process.
Right.
So that can be very beautiful.
So I
Frustrating,
work
but
with kids
beautiful.
with disabilities that are blind and visually impaired, and our thing is always to push them to their potential, you know.
Hmm.
And so trying to do the same thing with my mom, but it's a little different. You don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I can imagine that, being that motivator for children, you get a little bit
Mhm.
different results than when you're being a motivator for someone who's been where they are for decades and they're not trying to change nothing.
That's true. Thank you. Thank you. I've learned so much. And again, I just can't thank you all enough for all the resources out there, because there are many times that I don't get a chance to take notes when we're on the call, and then I can go back and watch the videos. So thank you again.
Wonderful. And on that note, I do apologize for anybody who jumped in on the wrong time at my last education. I had a typo in the newsletter and I said, for some reason it was 1:30 when it was actually 10. And so some of you all missed the last training we did. And so the recording is available for anybody who had missed it and wanted to get in there. And it was really good information. And I was really bummed that the typo happened. Because I thought this is going to be such a great resource, and then so many of you missed it. So if you are interested in having the link sent directly to you for that training, you don't feel like going on the website and hunting it down, I'm more than happy to send that out to anybody who's interested, because
Was
it
that
was
elder
really good information.
justice?
Yes,
Elder.
yes,
Okay. Okay.
yes, the elder justice one. Um,
Okay.
so hopefully our speaker will join us soon. I gave him the link, and for those of you who missed it, I said if the guest speaker for some reason can't log on and join us, we might just have to do an impromptu support group. But everyone will still be eligible to do the education stipend, whether we have the same topic presented or not. So I don't want you to feel like you've missed out on that. That being said, if you have yet to do so, please put your email in the chat so that I can send you the post survey. Once you complete the post survey, you'll be eligible to receive a $25 stipend, education stipend from us. So please be sure to put your email in the chat so that I can send that to you so you can get your stipend. Because that does help if you need to, especially if you need to have somebody to take over your caregiving duties for you to participate in these trainings. It's nice to have a little bit of money set aside to pay them if that's where you guys are. Someone raised their hand. It looks like, I'm not sure. I've just got a little raised hand icon, but I don't see.
Yes.
Yes.
With the stipends, is that just certain ones per month that we attend?
Yes. So there will be
Okay.
one education stipend opportunity
Okay.
each month. And if you're getting our newsletter, it'll have a little asterisk by it and it'll tell you which one is the education stipend opportunity. And so you fill out that post survey and we'll get you a check cut probably. Well, we try to do everything within 30 days, but a lot of times it's sooner than that.
Thanks for the clarification.
Of course, yes.
And we have 2 more sessions after today.
Yes. So we have, let me get my calendar up here because I don't remember anything unless I write it down. So we have our support group on the 18th, which is Monday at 10 a.m. This one will not be a traditional support group. It will be a fun activity support group. We're going to do a scavenger hunt and there will be prizes for the winner. And then on the 21st, we're going to do an education on procrastination and perfectionism and the link between the two and tips on how to get unstuck if you're feeling stuck. And I think that's the last one for the month. Yeah, the support group and the procrastination. And I'll be honest with you all, because I believe that transparency on my end gives you permission to be transparent on your end. I am not completely done with the procrastination and perfectionism program because I've been procrastinating on getting it done. So it will be done by the time, but I thought that was kind of funny. I'm like, of course, this is the topic I'm procrastinating on, is the one about procrastination. So if you feel that you're procrastinating, you're not alone. Okay. It happens to all of us. But yeah, and honestly, if you all have any topics that you want me to go over that I have not covered, or if you want me to do a more in-depth education on anything, please let me know, because I need all of the topics that are relevant to you so that I can give you what you guys need. And it looks like our speaker has joined us, Mr. Steven. All right, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Oh, he's still connecting, so we got to wait a little bit more. But yes, so if you all are interested in joining us for those trainings, please make sure you register so I can give you the link. And if you're having difficulty registering, because I know some of you all have, just email me, call me, and I'll register you for you. I'll register you for you. All right, so Mr. Steven, Mr. Gunter, are you with us? Can you hear me?
I can. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, wonderful. I was just chit-chatting with our group and letting them know that you graciously agreed to jump in and teach us some tips about long-term financial planning as it relates to caregiving. And I am overwhelmingly grateful for you to do this for us, because this is a topic I am very ignorant to. And so I can't pull anything out of my hat and come up with something. So I'm really thankful that you decided to join us today. Is there anything
it's no problem at all. And it's actually, I guess, a twist of fate. The kind of special needs planning is an area that I specialize in. So when Deborah asked me if I could do it, and I looked at my calendar, I was like, yeah, I'd be happy to. So without any knowledge of what y'all are looking for, I don't want to just like launch into a bunch of stuff that's not helpful. So what is it that y'all are looking for? What can I kind of go over, teach, educate on that would be most helpful for y'all?
Okay, well, I'll just give you kind of a quick summary. Our group here are family caregivers. So they're
Mhm.
taking care of a loved one unpaid at home. Some of them are taking care of children, adult children. Some are taking care of spouses and parents. And so I just wanted to kind of give them maybe an idea, general overview of like what would be some good things that they can do as far as long-term planning, maybe even just how to um, maintain savings to help with the caregiving, maybe just for themselves to kind of tuck a little away. If anybody in the group has anything specifically that they want him to talk about, just go ahead and enter in the chat, and hopefully he'll be able to get to everybody before our meeting ends. We do have about an hour we're scheduled for, but don't feel like you have to talk the entire hour. We often leave room at the end for questions. So with that said, I mean, if that's enough helpful information, I'll go ahead and let you get started. But if you'd rather hear from our group before you start, we can definitely give time for that.
No, I can go ahead and get started on some stuff, and I don't know who has what permissions to mute and unmute and stuff like that, but this will be I think a lot better and more enjoyable for everyone if it's a little interactive. So like if anyone has questions, please stop me, say, hey, I heard this, I don't understand this, what you said I don't think is right. Like I won't take any of it offensively. Like please, like let me know what your questions are, what your concerns are, and then we can kind of steer the conversation from there. But I appreciate the opportunity to talk with y'all. Like I said, this is a area that I kind of specialize in, and it's something that I am passionate about. I don't have a immediate family member or immediate loved one that has special needs. My wife is a special needs teacher, and I have taught acting here in Huntsville at Mary Mac Hall for the special needs population there since I've been here for pushing 7 years. So it is a population that is near and dear to my heart. And so anything that I can do to give back or to kind of help educate and make lives for our loved ones that have disabilities better, I'm all for. Because as y'all well know, there is a lot of information out there, and unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And it's kind of like that old game of telephone that we used to play in elementary school, where one person says something, and by 15 people down the line, I have on blue socks turns into Reggie killed my cat. And so it's one of those that like well-meaning people, no one like intentionally is out there like spewing just ignorant and terrible like lies about how to care for your loved ones with disabilities. I don't think that's the case most of the time, but if this is the truth, and then one person is like a little off, and then the next person's a little off, like I said, 5 or 6 people down the line, you're wanting to go here, and all of a sudden you're headed that direction. You're not really headed in the right direction at all. So hopefully I can give y'all a little bit of kind of maybe think of it like a compass, a little bit more direction on where to go. I will give you the caveat up front. I am not a lawyer. I cannot, and I will not give legal advice. If at any point it steps into that, I will give you as much information as I can, but I can't get into like actually giving legal advice. Same thing, I'm not an accountant, so I can't give specific tax advice. And I do not work for the government. So I can give you some general ideas of how Social Security, SSD, SSI, all that work. But a lot of my answers, if you're asking real specific questions, will be call Social Security. Because when you get into the government benefits, it's one of those things that everyone's situation is so unique. So now that I've gotten my disclaimers out of the way, when we're thinking about long-term financial planning, and this is true whether we're talking about caring for a loved one with a disability, for ourselves, for our own retirement, for kids' college, anything of that nature, when we're looking at long-term and what we should be doing with money, I kind of like to take a pyramid approach. And I wish I had some of my slides with me, but I don't, so I'll have to make hand gestures, I guess. So one of the very first things that we want to do is we want to have that base of the pyramid. And what that base to the pyramid is we want to be as debt-free as we reasonably can be. I know a lot of us probably have heard of or maybe even followed Dave Ramsey, and there are a lot of people out there that are big proponents of being debt-free, myself included. That being said, being 100% debt-free is not always reasonable, right? I mean, most people are going to have a mortgage, having a car payment, but what we want to avoid is having any debt that crushing debt, that how the heck am I going to pay this bill sort of debt. So we want to get our cash flow in order. And then what we really want to do, because we can kind of get stuck in that debt cycle, is in a perfect world, we want to have about 3 to 6 months of living expenses socked away in what we call an emergency fund. So before we're saving and before we're putting money in bonds and stock markets and all those sorts of things, we need to make sure we have that base layer set up to where if to care for myself and to care for my loved one that has a special needs, I need 3,000, 5,000, 7,000, whatever the number is. I want to make sure that I have several months of those living expenses set aside, really out of any sort of market. That money really should be in cash. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be in like green paper money in a safe in your house, but it needs to be in a checking account, in a savings account, in a money market, in something that you have access to it in a day or so. Then once we have that kind of base layer built, then we can start looking at, do we need to get into special needs trust or ABLE accounts or things of that nature? But we need to get that base built, because what can happen if we don't have that, if we don't have our budget under control and we don't have that emergency fund, is what happens is the lift breaks or the car breaks down, and now we can't, you've got a loved one who's in a wheelchair and you're having to call special services to come transport them. And all of a sudden that's an extra expense. If we don't have that emergency fund, now all of a sudden we have to go borrow that money, right? We have to put it on a credit card. We have to do something like that. And then we end up in that spiral, that circle of, we bring on a bunch of debt, then we work hard to get it paid off, and then we bring on more and then pay it. And you never really feel like you're getting ahead. And so that's why it can be so helpful to have that emergency fund, because life happens, and especially when we're caring for and have a loved one with special needs, like, we know that we can't always plan, hey, every month looks exactly the same.
Could I ask a question? Okay, you saying, have this set aside.
Mhm.
Okay, when you go through to fill out application for assistance, they ask for all your information. So if you got over X amount, you're not qualified for the assistance. So where you go from?
You're correct, but that's where we can get into some planning. So along those lines, are any of y'all familiar with what's called an ABLE account? So I'm not, forgive me, I'm not seeing names. It looks like George, is that correct?
Yeah, yes, that's me. Yeah.
Okay, George. So it looks like so what you're saying is correct. If you have a loved one, we'll say for argument's sake, it's your wife. If your wife has more than $2,500 in an account that's in her name, then that is going, like, if anything is means tested, so SSI, anything that has that means test, Medicaid, anything that has that means test to it, if you have more than that threshold, which I won't get on my soapbox of why that's an archaic number, but that's a discussion for another time. But if you have more than that means testing threshold, then you're exactly correct. They can say, hey, you have too much money, you no longer qualify for Medicaid. But what we can do is there are things, there are places that we can put that money, and an ABLE account is one of them. And that's kind of that next rung on the ladder. And when we get into special needs planning, it's not always as cut and dry as sometimes the rungs on the ladder kind of weave in and out of one another. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. But that ABLE account is an account that we're allowed to put money into. If anyone has heard of a 529, a 529 is a type of account that is used for education. So you put money into it, you have a loved one that goes to, you can use it for high school now, but it's usually for college. So they go to college, they go to graduate school, med school, law school, whatever the case may be. You put money in, it grows. And if you use it for education, when you pull that money out, all of those benefits are tax-free. So I'm telling you this kind of as a background, those 529 accounts have existed for a long time, but they're specific to education. Several years ago, there was some legislation passed, and thank the Lord that it was, that said, hey, what if we took that same idea, it's under the same section of the Internal Revenue Code, what if we take that same idea and we apply it not to education, but to folks with disabilities? And so that's where we end up with, it looks like Jenny sent something, recorded training for Alabama ABLE. Yeah, so that's where we ended up with the ABLE accounts, the Achieving Better Life Enhancement or Enrichment is what ABLE stands for. So the idea is money goes into it and anyone can put money into it. But the nice thing about it is if it grows and it goes up in value, if it comes out to meet the needs of your loved one with special needs, any growth or anything in it, all of those benefits come out tax-free. And George, to your point, that's not an asset that is counted towards that means test. So if you had $6,000 in an ABLE account and $1,000 in a checking account, Medicaid's going to look at the $1,000 in the checking account. They might look at the $6,000 that's in the ABLE account, but they're not going to count it against you. So that's a way, that's a planning way that we can help build that base layer. And there's different ways, like depending on what your objective is, like inside the ABLE account, if it is money that you don't think you'll need for a while, you can invest it and it can grow and then it can come out tax-free. If it's something that you think you're going to need in a couple of months, they've got a checking account option where you're going to earn 1% or 2 or 3, depending on what interest rates are. But the real benefit to it, to your question there, George, is it doesn't disqualify us from some of these other benefits that are means tested. And so that's something that the state of Alabama has. They used to, when they first started, I think we used Nebraska, but we have our own our own ABLE accounts now. They're super easy to set up. They take about 5 or 10 minutes to set up. There are limits to them. You can't put like $1 million into one. You can put the annual gift tax exclusion into one. So you can put up to $15,000 or 17. I honestly forget the number off the top of my head. And that's total. It's not like 6 people can put $15,000 in and you can get to $100,000+. Like you can get 100 or you can get $15,000 total. But they're a really nice way to help build that kind of base layer to say, hey, I need some money. I need to have some savings, but I don't want to get disqualified from Medicaid. I don't want to get disqualified from SSI, some of these other things that I rely on for my income.
And Stephen, I just want to make a comment to our caregivers. We did have a guest speaker on about maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago, specifically talking about the Alabama ABLE program. And that's the link that I put in the chat. So if you need more specific information about the ABLE program, please feel free to watch the replay. And the contact information for that agent that came and spoke with us is also in that presentation. So if you need specific information based on your case, that information should be available to you as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I would definitely recommend that because if they came in and gave a presentation on it, I'm sure they have a lot more in-depth look at it than I'm able to kind of go into here. But George, did that answer your question?
Yeah, because I know I've had, excuse me, fill out a application and it was asking, you know, what did I have in my safe deposit box? You know, all your checking account or whatever, and then so if you was over 25,000, you didn't qualify. So, I just
Yeah, and different programs are going to have different thresholds. Like the main ones that are designed for the person with the disability are Medicaid, SSI, SSD, and then Medicare. So those are like government programs. Now, if you're looking at some other programs that are designed to say, hey, I'm the caregiver, we need some help, there may be some different or higher thresholds on those. I'm not as familiar with those off the top of my head.
see at the time, we was joint, joint accounts. And so
Yeah. And that's where that's another planning thing. A lot of times, like when I'm doing financial planning for clients, they're married. If we don't have this special needs planning, a lot of times it's helpful to have money joint, because then if something happens, then it passes automatically. But this is a situation sometimes where it's more beneficial to separate spouse's assets, because if it's joint, then all of a sudden, as you said, you can have $20,000 in a savings account, but if your loved one with the disability's name's not on it, it's not their money. So for a means test, they're not going to be held kind of against that. But if it's joint and their name is on it, then exactly right. Then that's going to get captured in that means test, and they might very well say, no, sorry, you've got too much money. And then another planning tool that we can use along the same lines, if we're trying to make sure that we're keeping those government benefits that so many of us rely on, one of the other things we can look at, and this is especially helpful if you're caring for a child or someone notably younger than you are, if you have your own assets, say you've got your own assets from working or retiring and this, that, and the other, and you want to leave some to a child, leave some to a grandchild that has special needs, you can do that in what's called a special needs trust, or to get a little technical or specific, a third-party wholly discretionary trust. And what I mean by that is you can put however many zeros on it after you want, but say you've got $100,000 that you want to leave to a child or a grandchild. It's your money, you own it. You leave it in trust to your child or grandchild. When you pass away, you name someone other than that child as the trustee, or the person that's the person that's got the reins of the trust. And you name the person with the disability as the beneficiary. So there's three parties to a trust. There's the person that puts the money in, there's the person that controls it, and there's the person who's benefiting from it. Well, if it's your money and you control it and it's for your benefit, you know who the IRS thinks owns it? You, right? Because it's your money, you control it, and it's for your benefit. So it doesn't matter if it's in a trust. As far as the IRS is concerned, that's your money. But if from the loved one with the disability standpoint, if it wasn't their money, so it came from mom or dad, it came from grandma or grandpa, so it wasn't their money to start with, my brother, my aunt, my uncle, my whoever it is in control of it, I'm just the beneficiary of it, and I don't have any right to demand anything out of that trust. Whoever is in control of it, whoever is the trustee, sibling, aunt, uncle, whoever it is, they have full discretion to say, hey, this is what needs to come in and out of that trust. Then not only that does a couple things. One, it gives you that benefit. You've got that 100,000, or put whatever number you want to on it. It gives you that bucket of money that can be used for your loved one. But because they have no ability to control it or require anything from it, it's not captured as part of those means tested assets. Because as the IRS and as the government sees it, it's not theirs. They can't actually do anything with it. It's for their benefit, but they cannot require anything to happen to it. One of the other benefits of it, so in this trust example, who files taxes? The trust files taxes. So the trust is its own entity. As far as the government and as far as the IRS is concerned, George, I'm going to pick on you just because I've been talking to you and I can see your name. So George sets up a trust and it's in his, like George is over here as the person. George has a trust. George and that trust are separate entities. George's trust has its own tax ID number. It files its own taxes. All of the income and everything that is associated with the trust happens over here on one tax return, and everything that happens with George personally and his money happens over here. So that does, like I said, that does a few things for us. One, you've got the trust money over here, and if we set it up right, you can, one, keep it from being means tested. You can, two, remember we said we've got the three parties of the trust? Well, if you're the one that put the money in it, if it's your money and it's for your benefit, that's what's called a first party trust. And what can happen there, and what oftentimes happens, is not necessarily that you will get disqualified from Medicaid, but when that beneficiary, when that loved one with the disability passes away, before anyone else can get money out of that trust, whatever money from Medicaid was paid out has to get paid back to Medicaid. So that's called a Medicaid clawback. So say you pass money, this happens, you've got a loved one who was in an accident and they had a settlement that was given to them, and it was given to them. It wasn't given to a sibling or a parent or anything like that. Like the settlement was to them. We can set up trusts and we can get a lot of protection and we can do a lot of things with them. But in that scenario, because it was their money and it's for their benefit, any amount that Medicaid paid during that beneficiary's lifetime, when that beneficiary passes away, that money has to go back to Medicaid before anyone else can get paid from the trust. So that's kind of the difference in like where the source of the money came from. It's not the end of the world because the idea is to benefit the person with the disability, right? So if there's anything left, it's kind of gravy. That's at least the way I look at it. But if we can avoid giving a whole bunch of money back to Uncle Sam, we're going to do that if at all possible. The other benefit of having money in trust is, using my example before, like George has his trust over here and his own personal stuff over here. George gets into a car accident and he hurt somebody. Well, George got into the car accident, not the trust, right? So whoever George accidentally hurt in this car accident is going to have a really hard time suing George's trust because George's trust didn't get into the car accident. So you can get some asset protection in those regards. So there's a lot of cool things that we can do with trust. The bummer to them, and I'm going to do my best not to disparage lawyers here, but the bummer to them is you've got to have a decent bit of money to make a trust worthwhile, because any lawyer, any professional, anyone who does professional trust services, y'all forgive me, are y'all still there? My computer is wigging out on me.
I can
Okay.
hear you. Yeah.
All right, sorry, my Microsoft Teams just freaked out on me for no reason. So you have to have a decent bit of assets, because if you put $10,000 into a trust, somebody has to manage it and be the trustee of it. And I don't know of a single lawyer or a single professional trust administrator that is going to want to administer a small trust. Now there are pooled trusts, but I'm not going to get into a lot of the minutia of those right now. So suffice it to say, if you need a trust, Vanessa's asking, would you need a lawyer to set up a trust? And if so, is it expensive? Yes, and depends on your definition of expensive. Yes, you need a lawyer to draft a trust. technically you can go to LegalZoom or something like that, but please, 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 please don't do that. Those things work like 1% of the time for 1% of the population. When you're dealing with a loved one with special needs, you need to make sure that this is an attorney, that this is what they do, and they are very, very, very good at it. We work with, I don't know where geographically where everyone's located. We work with some folks here over at Martinson and Beeson here in Huntsville. They do a very good job. They usually run about $2,500 to set up a trust package. So it's not cheap, but if you look at it from the standpoint of an investment and you say, hey, if I can put $2,500 into this and avoid losing Medicaid and avoid Medicaid clawbacks and avoid this, that, and the other, then your ROI, your return on your investment is really good. Now, you still have to have the $2,500 to pay it, but it is money, in my opinion, that is very well spent.
Stephen, there was another question from,
I was going to say, I'm just getting back here because I think I missed a question or two.
yeah, Lolita asked, how long does the trust need to be in effect to realize the benefit?
It's more a matter of it's not that the trust has to be in effect for any amount of time. We just have to get things into the trust. And so that's where like the action plan comes in, because you could pay a lawyer $2,500 to draft a trust. And if you don't actually change wills to where things flow into it, or you don't change titles, excuse me, so that the trust owns it, you've got a really expensive packet of papers. So what we need to do is we need to get the things, we need to change titles so that the trust owns things, so that the trust benefits from things. You can kind of think of like the estate plan like a funnel. What we're trying to do is get everything inside that funnel. So then the like the trust or the funnel says where it eventually goes. So we're trying to get beneficiaries in, we're trying to get titles in, we're trying to get everything inside that funnel we can, so that then the trust ultimately dictates where it goes. But there's no length of time really that says, hey, a trust has to exist for 10 years to get any benefit from it. I mean, they're effective day one. Hopefully that answered your question. Okay, I got a thumbs up. Cool, thank you. Any other questions? I know we're kind of bouncing all over the place here. But any questions on that? So there are some things, like I said, whether it's trust or able accounts that we can do to help put money into that can help us still maintain those government benefits, be it Medicaid, SSI, whatever they are, that a lot of our loved ones really rely on. Like I know a personal example, like I said, I don't have an immediate family member, but my wife's uncle has some special needs. And when his mom, my wife's grandma, passed away, she did this wholly discretionary trust thing that we talked about. And fortunately, one of her daughters is an attorney, and like the two of us kind of walked through it and went through the process. But grandma passed away. Uncle Jim is the beneficiary. My mother-in-law is the trustee. So every now and again, I manage that trust for them. Every now and again, my mother-in-law says, hey, I need you to send me $1,000, $2,000, whatever it is from Jim's trust. And I send it to him, and it doesn't disqualify him from Medicaid. He still gets his disability checks, all of that, because as I said, it's not like that's a real world example. It's not his money. But Lolita, I will kind of expand on what you asked there. How long does a trust need to be in effect to realize the benefit? Like I said, the trust is effective day one, but one thing that we do want to look at and that we do spend time and pay attention to, like I said, in all planning, is not necessarily your question, how long does the trust need to exist, but how long before we need this money? So y'all might be sitting there thinking like, okay, Stephen, this all sounds great. But I need some money to pay my bills next week. I need some money to help buy a new wheelchair ramp in a year. I need some money to buy a new car in 5 years. And especially if you're caring for a child or a grandchild, I need some money for 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road. Like, how do I decide to balance all of that? And that's where we look at the time horizon of like, when do we need this money? So as I said before, when we're building out that pyramid, when we build out the base of that pyramid, that monthly cash flow, that stuff we need to pay our bills, that stuff that we need to kind of build that emergency fund, that needs to be in cash. Like I said, checking account, savings accounts, money markets, stuff that we can get to it like that if we need it. Things that are a little further down the road. So anything, in my opinion, anything that I can wait more than 12 months on, that's when we can start to think about what I call investing that money. So if I'm going to need this money in the next 12 months, that's bank money. And I recognize that I might be giving up some return on it because I can probably get 5-6% in a bond where I'm only going to get 4% in a money market, but that's fine. I'm willing to give up that little bit of return to have no market risk, to not have to worry about value fluctuation at all. Your checking account, your savings account, your money markets are going to stay dead flat unless you add money to it or pull money out of it. If you're not going to need that money for longer than a year, so you think it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years or something like that, that's a great place to go look at investing in the bond market. So when we talk to clients about how to invest portfolios, we say, hey, you've really kind of got 3 buckets you can put money in. You can put them in cash, you can put your money in bonds, or you can put your money over here in the stock market. So like I said, cash is that super safe, less than 1 year. Bonds is that kind of middle ground, that 1 to maybe 5 years or so. And bonds give us better return than cash, have a little bit more volatility, but nowhere near the volatility, over here, that stocks have. Now, we know in the long run, long-term financial planning here, we know in the long run that we get a lot better returns out of the stock market. So historically, like over long periods of time, you get about 3% rate of return on cash with no volatility. You get about 5% rate of return on bonds with very little volatility. We get about a 10% rate of return on stocks with a pretty good bit of volatility. And that volatility is why we say we need to have a long time horizon for stock market money. Because we have gone through, I'm guessing y'all remember 2008 and 2009. We have gone through periods where the stock market goes down and it takes it 4 or 5 years to recover to where it was. Like if you look at it like a V, it can take 4 or 5 years to get from one side of the V to the other. And so what we don't ever want to do, again, using that V analogy, if we need money, we don't ever want the stock market to be down. All of a sudden, we're down here at the bottom of the V, and we need to pull money out of the portfolio to pay the bills, like I said, to fix a ramp, something like that. Well, if we don't have anything in cash and we don't have anything in bonds, and all we have is stock market money over here, and we're at the bottom of that V, our only option is to sell stocks into a market that's down 20, 30, 40%. And if we can avoid it, we don't ever want to do that. So having that bond bucket money, having that cash bucket over here, like I said, if we've got loved ones that are younger and we're really like, this is long-term money and we're saving this money for college and for them going out on their own and things of that nature, that's perfect. Like that's a great place for stock market money, because that's, I'm not going to need this for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, sometimes 20, 30 years. It's a perfect place for stock market money, because if we can, I can run through the numbers if you want, but I can tell you right now, if you make 10% a year for 30 years, that money's going to grow really, really nicely. But again, we have to kind of balance it out. What we don't want to do and what we can be tempted to do is say, hey, we get the most return from the stock market. Let's just throw as much money at the stock market as we can. And when the stock market's doing well, that's great, right? But we also know that the stock market doesn't always do well. And like I said, not to beat a dead horse, but what we don't ever want to put ourselves in the situation of doing is being at the bottom of that V, having to pull money out, and now we're forced sellers into a bad stock market. Any questions on that?
I have a question.
Yes.
So when you are investing in the stock market, I know there's a lot of different ways you can go about doing that. You know, my husband does the Robinhood app and things like that. Would you have, I guess, some insight on, would it be better for us to invest with, you know, a stockbroker or somebody, you know, we hire somebody, or do you think that we can get similar benefits through something like an app or doing it on our own?
It really depends. Being one of those people that invests money for people, my answer is obviously going to sound biased. And I don't mean it to be. It really depends. Like, I am obviously biased towards, like, I think that, at least I like to pretend that what I do makes a difference. Like, I think that for the vast majority of people, unless you have, let me back up a little bit, be self-deprecating a little bit. I don't know anything that y'all can't go figure out. Right? Like, I haven't like downloaded some program into my brain that anyone on this call can't, like, you just can't figure out what I know. I've just done it for a long time. So I just have a lot of that knowledge just rattling around in my giant head here. But none of what I know is unknowable. Everything, all of the information that you need is out there. It's really a matter of, is that how you want to spend your time, learning all of these things, knowing all of these things, keeping up with markets, keeping up with laws, this, that, and the other. And if it is, that's fine. Like, I don't take that personally at all. But what I find, like anecdotally, what I find is, especially folks that are in this position, that are in that like caregiver role, we have so many other things that we need to be spending our time on, and so many other things that we need to focus on, that I've got myself, my own mental health, my own physical health. I've got my loved one to take care of, their physical health. Like, I've got all of these things that are competing for my attention. Stacking what is the stock market doing on top of that, for most people, is just not something they want to add to their plate. Again, it's not wrong if you do. And for some folks, it's kind of a relief from the other aspects of their life that feel like they take over. Sometimes it's nice to go hole yourself up for 30 minutes and just go like look at candlestick charts and things. Some people like that, especially here in Huntsville. Like, we've got our engineering crowd that will just eat it up. But if that's not you, if you're not someone who's going to spend the time doing those things and keeping up with markets and knowing how much should I have in stock and how much should I have in bonds and in what accounts and things like that, then please go find some help. And find someone who is as I am, a CFP, a certified financial planner. You don't want someone who's just an old school stockbroker, because all they're going to do is say, hey, buy this stock. And when it doesn't work, they're going to say, sell it. And they're going to recommend a new one. You want someone who's really looking at your whole big picture financial plan, not just what your portfolio is doing, but how does that portfolio relate to your taxes, to your insurance, to your estate plan? Are your beneficiaries set up correctly? Is your cash flow right? Like, is it all working towards your big goal, not just, do I think Disney's a good buy or not?
Thank you for that.
So did that answer your question without sounding too self-serving?
Absolutely. I just know, you know, at least for me, I'm very ignorant to all of this. And so it would behoove me to hire somebody that has the brain space for it, because I typically don't. But I do know that, you know, when it comes to investing money, especially if you're, you know, you don't actually have a whole lot of extra to put aside, you know, it might be better to have somebody who knows what they're doing to maximize what you're going to get out of it, rather than just taking a shot in the dark with an app.
Yeah. Well, and like not to downplay apps, and like there are a lot of good, like I've used mint.com since grad school 20 years ago. I've used or I've had clients use Every Dollar and things like that. Like, and especially if you're in a situation where we don't have a trust that has $1 million in it that we can just go like help solve a lot of our problems, right? Like if you're in that situation where, hey, money is tight on a real monthly basis, a lot of times those apps really can be helpful. Because money is one of those tricky things that if we don't give it a job to do, if we don't say, hey, this $500, this is your job, and this $100, this is your job, like it does this amazing job of just growing legs and like walking away. And we have no idea where it went. And we have no idea how we spent as much money as we did. And like, I'm saying that to myself as much as I am to any, like, I am the worst about that. So that's where if you're really trying to put a cash flow plan together, I don't like the word budget. We like to call them spending or cash flow plans. So if you're really trying to put a spending plan or a cash flow plan together, sometimes those apps really can be helpful to help you see where those dollars are going. And you look back in 3 months and say, wait, I spent how much on eating out? Or I spent how much on clothes? And then you can say, okay, well, that's dumb. I don't need to do that anymore. And I can divert some of those dollars over here and help this budget item or this spending plan item be a little bit easier.
And I know we're coming up close to the end here, so I don't want to take up everybody's time, but maybe this is a question that everyone kind of has on their mind, is there ever too little of an amount to start investing or to start planning? Because I know, at least for me personally, you know, it's kind of hard to trim the fat sometimes when you're eating lean meat because there's not a lot of fat to trim. So what would be some insights or some advice that you could give to those of us who maybe don't have a lot of expendable or, you know, money that isn't already designated somewhere?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So a couple of things. One, like I said, giving your money a job to do is helpful. And so really saying, hey, like I've got a mortgage, I've got rent, like that's an easy one. Like that money goes there. But then saying, hey, I should be able to spend X amount. And then anything above that, like put yourself in a situation to succeed. Because I've seen people do it and I've tried to do it myself. Like, especially when I was in graduate school and I had like literally no money. You put yourself on this like shoestring budget to where you feel like you start to think like, I don't know, can I get this pencil eraser to like last a little long? Like you can budget yourself to death to where it will drive you nuts. And then at some point you throw up your hands and you say, forget it, I can't do it. And it's all hopeless. So build a little bit of fudge factor in there to say, hey, look, I've got to be able to be a real person. I've got to be able to breathe. I've got to be able to have a little bit of fun. Now, maybe don't have 50% of your budget allocated to do whatever I want, but have an amount that's in that to go do things and to go be a real person. That, especially if you're in that caregiver role, like that is so important to have that little bit of money, even if it's not money, even if you're just budgeting your time to say, hey, here's the hour a day, or like I had a client in Florida whose wife came down with early onset dementia at 59. And so he had like budgeted into his time. He would have visiting angels come in and they would sit with his wife for a couple hours while he went and played golf once a week. And he said, I kind of felt selfish doing it at first, but he's like, I realized after doing that I was a much better caregiver. I was a much better husband. I was a much better, like having that time to just go hang out with my buddies and decompress a little bit. And I know I've gone way off this way from actually answering what your question was. But that is one thing, whether you're budgeting your money or your time, like set yourself up for success. And then also realize, take this little bit of knowledge and hopefully plug it away somewhere. Every little bit matters. And so along those lines of like setting yourself up for success, you don't have to start with $0 in savings and have the goal of, I've got to get to $30,000 in 6 months. Like, say, hey, I want to get $500 saved. And then when you get to 500, say, hey, I'm going to get to 1,000. Then I'm going to get to 2,000. Like, set yourself small, attainable goals. And before you know it, you'll be at that ultimate goal. And when we're talking about investing, the power of compounding interest is a pretty amazing thing. If you can make 10% a year, like I said, over here in the risky stock market, but if you can make 10% a year, that money will double every 7 years, roughly. So if you had $1,000 and you made 10%, 7 years, you'll have $2,000. And then 7 years after that, you'll have 4,000. And 7 years after that, you'll have 8, and then 16, and then 32. And so that doubling really starts to compound over time. And that's where, especially again, if we're looking at those younger folks, or if we're looking about a long period of time, if you've got 4 7-year periods, you've got 28 years. Like I said, that $1,000 grows to $8,000, or you've got 8 times the amount of money at the end of 28 years.
Thank you for that. So I think the moral of the story is, don't be discouraged if you don't have a whole lot to set aside. Every little bit counts. And it's a lot better than throwing it in a sock drawer somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, we have a few minutes left. Are there any other questions or comments that you want to share with Stephen before we close today? All right. Well, I do want to thank you so much for your time, Stephen. Yes, Lolita's asking for contact info. Is it okay if we share your contact info with our caregivers?
Please do.
Okay, great. Would you mind typing it in the chat, because I just met you, so I don't have it yet.
I will do it. Let's see here.
And also, for any of you who have yet to do so, please put your email in the chat as well, so that I can send you your post survey. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear your opinions and your ideas, so that I can make sure that this education is getting to you and you got what you need. And any ideas for future trainings, I'm all ears for. And again, if you have any specific needs that you are not comfortable asking for in this space, feel free to email myself or Stephen, and I'll get information to him if you have any questions. And thank you so much, Stephen. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you all for having me. I apologize. I felt like it was a little helter-skelter. I usually feel like I have my thoughts a little more organized than this, but hopefully it was helpful.
Oh, yes. And I think we can all agree that as caregivers, we are definitely used to making quick adjustments when necessary. So you're in good company. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Stephen, I look forward to collaborating with you again in the future. If it ever comes up, I'd love the opportunity. And
absolutely. You know how to get a hold of me.
Wonderful. Yes. Now that I have your email in the chat.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Enjoy your evening, and we'll see you next week. Bye.